Yeah, you got it all wrong, I'm just having fun. We'll hang out tonight and tomorrow we'll be done. Yeah, you got it all wrong, girl, don't waste your time here. I know what I want and I'm doing just fine all by myself.
Yo, what's up guys, it's Ability here and welcome to my maging tutorial. In this video I'm going to teach you guys everything that I know about maging. It's going to be a very long video, but it will definitely serve you well. If you follow the steps in this video, you'll be on your way to being a good magus. So if you are coming into this video and you don't know anything about maging, you will have a lot to learn, but I promise I will be thorough about everything, so I'm going to try not to leave anyone in the dust. And if you're coming to this video and you already do know how to mage, I bet you will still learn something. So if you have the time, try not to skip around, and we're going to start off now with the possible outcomes of combining a rune, as well as how to count sync. Okay guys, so when maging there are 4 possible outcomes that can occur. There can be a critical success, which is where I would gain +1 chance and I would not lose any other stats, like so. And then there can be a success, which means I would gain +1 strength, but I would substitute it for chance. And then there can be a critical failure, where I do not gain any stats and I lost that 1 strength there. And then there can be just a failure, which nothing happens. So with these 4 in mind, we can move forward into learning how to calculate sync on an item. Sync is a part of maging that is extremely important. It is probably the most important thing to understand when you go into learning maging. What sync does is it allows you to stop maging by just guessing and just throwing runes at an item, and it allows you to turn the maging process into a math equation in which you can calculate exactly at what point to stop maging and when to continue. So what sync is a value, a numerical value that each rune in the game has. So all of these runes here, as you can see, like an initiative rune gives 10 initiative. It has a numerical value behind it that is not shown in game and has to be tested and written down or just memorized. So to help you guys out, I have made a chart which I will put on the screen now. And this is a chart that I have made before, but this is an updated one with all new runes that were added to the game, such as all the new shield runes like % spell damage, range damage, weapon, melee. All of those have been added, as well as the new runes such as paw heals and paw fixed resistance. So those are all added in this chart. This is the most up-to-date chart I have found anywhere, so I made this one and I haven't seen anything that is currently up to date as well. So this chart is probably pretty confusing if you haven't seen anything like this before. Essentially what it is though is I'll just run through each column to help you guys understand. So for the stat and rune column, the stat column is just every stat in the game written, in plain English. The rune column is each stat translated into its rune's name. So for example, on initiative, if you were to go to the rune market and search the full word initiative, you would get no results. But if you were to go and you searched I, which is the rune name in it, you would get the initiative runes. And for some runes, not all, these are the next 3 columns, there are small, paw, and raw bonuses. So what these are just different powers of the same rune, and the small gives the least amount of stat, then paw gives slightly more, and raw gives the most amount of stat. So for initiative, it goes 10, 30, 100. Not every rune in the game has all 3 of these variations. Some have 2, some only have the small runes. So for example, critical resistance has a small bonus and a paw rune, a small rune and a paw rune, but it doesn't have a raw rune. And for example, % resistance only has a small rune. So it varies per rune, but this chart includes which ones are in the game and which ones are not. If they don't exist, it's marked by an X. And then the next column is the most important column on this chart, which is the sync value column. So you can see we'll start at initiative since it's the first stat on this list. Also, this chart goes in ascending order, so initiative is the lowest sync value in the game, and then if you go all the way to the bottom and you see AP, that is the highest sync value in the game. So it's ascending order. And for the sync value column, as you can see for initiative, we have a sync value of 0.1. So now this does not mean that the small rune is 0.1 sync. What this means is that 1 initiative is 0.1 sync. So now if we minimize that really quickly, and I bring up my initiative runes as well as a calculator, you can see none of these runes give 1 initiative, which is what the sync value column is representing. So the sync value column gives us the number 0.1, which is equivalent to 1 initiative. So now if we take the amount of initiative on this rune, which is 10, and we multiply it by the sync value, we get 1, which is the sync value of an initiative rune. So this rune right here is 1 sync. And now if we go to Pa and we do the same thing, so it's 30 initiative, and we multiply it by the sync value of 1 initiative, which is 0.1, we get 3, which is the sync value of the Pa initiative rune. And now if we go to Ra and we do the exact same thing, which is 100 initiative, and we multiply it by 0.1, which is the sync value of 1 initiative, we get 10, which is the sync value of a Ra initiative. So that is kind of confusing. I encourage you to just go through and practice learning all these syncs. I'll go through another rune really quick just to make it clear. So if we search wisdom here, and I bring this up, so if you refer to the chart, by the way, the chart I will link in the description for you guys to save and refer to when you start maging. So if you download that chart and open it, it'll probably be helpful to have that open while watching this video. I'll put it up at times where I'm directly referring to it. And if it's, if I'm going to be talking a lot about sync, I'll have it on the screen. But if you look at the chart and you look at wisdom, the sync value column has wisdom set as 3 sync. So that 3 sync is the equivalent, one wisdom is 3 sync. And now in this case, which was different than the initiative, we actually do have a rune that gives 1 wisdom. So this 1 wisdom rune is worth 3 sync. It directly correlates with the sync value column. So now this rune we know is 3 sync. And if we go to the Pa wisdoms, we have 3 wisdom. So we do 3 wisdom multiplied by the sync value of 1 wisdom, which is 3. And we do 3 times 3, and we get 9 sync. So a Pa wisdom rune is 9 sync. And if we go to the Ra bonuses, we have 10 wisdom. So we do 10 wisdom multiplied by the sync value of 1 wisdom, which is 3, and we get 30. So this is a 30 sync rune. So that is how you use this chart to calculate the sync values of every rune in the game. And once you learn that, you can move forward in utilizing the sync as you're maging. So this is simply how to find the sync of every single rune in the game, because you will need to know the sync of every rune in order to mage proficiently. So now we'll move forward in how to actually use these numbers while maging. Now that we understand through the chart how to calculate the sync value of every rune in the game, we need to figure out how to put that into play in the maging interface. So if I bring up my intelligence runes here, on the Skeleno, we are going to try and go for an intelligence over mage. So here I'm going to use raw intelligence runes until I lose my AP and gain some sync from it. Okay guys, so we finally just dropped the AP here. So now I can calculate the sync, and as you see in the sidebar, -1 AP, which is plus 100 sync, and then we gained 10 intelligence, which is minus 10 sync. So now comes the part in the mage where we need to decide whether we want to add the AP first or whether we want to wait until we use all 90 sync to add it. The difference between these two methods are, if I add the AP right now, I have a higher chance of getting a critical success and keeping all of my sync than if I add it at the end. So if I use all of my sync, and let's say we get 30 intelligence, and then I add the AP, there's a greater chance that I lose that 30 intelligence. However, the positive thing about adding it last is that it is easier to mage an item that has less stats on it. So without the AP on the Skeleno, it's going to be easier to get more intelligence on it. However, we run the risk of losing all that intelligence at the end. So if you want a very good, more expensive, more time-consuming mage, you should add it at the end. And if you want just a quick mage that you're going to resell, you should add it first, in general. And then there are situations where that alters. So here we have 90 sync, and because I don't want to spend too much time on this video, or I don't want to waste too much time in this video, I'm going to add the AP first. Unfortunately, it actually took our sync down here. You can see the minus sync message. So that leaves us at 0 sync, and we need to drop the AP again. Hopefully it drops quicker than it did the last time. Okay, so here we go. So here's an interesting scenario. So I dropped the AP, so that is -1 AP, so plus 100 sync. And then we also lost 9 intelligence, so that is +9 sync, and we used a raw intelligence rune, which is -10 sync. So that leaves us at 99 sync. So just to recap that, since that's a confusing one, 1 AP plus 100 sync, we lost 9 intelligence, so that is +9 sync, and we used a raw intelligence rune, so that is -10 sync. So +100 +9 -10. So now I'm going to see if we can critical success this AP. We did, nice. So now we have 99 sync. So here comes the question of when should you use small, paw, and raw runes. If I bring up a calculator here, there is a rule that is if you multiply the stat value, so here we have a 1 intelligence rune by 20, we get 20. So a small intelligence rune is able to be used up until about 20 intelligence. Same goes for paw, so 3 times 20 is 60. So we can use paw intelligences until we reach about 60 intelligence, and then we need to switch to raw. The reason that you don't want to use all raw or all paw or all small is because if you use the correct rune in the correct range, it has a higher chance of critical successing than the other ones. So if I were to try a raw intelligence, it has a lower chance of critical successing and not taking sync than a small intelligence rune. And then same goes for paw versus small. So here I'm going to use as many small intelligences as it takes to get close to 20 intel, and I'm going to be counting my sync. So here 1 intelligence minus sync, so I could do -1, and I'm going to keep track of multiple. So there's a free one, there's no sync message on this one, so there's a critical success. -1, -2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, okay, -23 sync. So here I'm going to switch to paw since we're nearing 18 intelligence, and these are 3 sync each. -3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30. So I'm going to just update my sync here. Okay, so now we'll do -3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30. So we have 45 sync total. 33, 36, 39, 42, 45. So we actually ended up only getting 30 intelligence. We had a lot of failures at the end here. That is because getting more than a 30 stat over mage is pretty difficult, just because it becomes harder to mage the higher stat you get. So here we have a 1 AP 30 intelligence over mage, and the reason that we did not lose any intelligence since we started maging is because we followed 2 rules. The first of these 2 rules being that we stopped maging at 0 sync. If we were to keep maging past 0 sync, we would have no more sync left to lose. So if I use a small intelligence rune here, there's no sync to lose, so it's actually going to take stat instead. So I should lose 1 intelligence instead of losing sync now. The other rule that we followed, if I just quickly reset this Galeno and I create sync, I'll drop it with a summon to drop it quickly. So now we should have 70 sync because it's 100 from the AP minus 30 from the summon rune. So now if I put some intelligence on here, I'm just going to use raw to get it on very quickly. So we'll get 20, so there's -20 sync. Now, even though I have 50 sync, if I were to switch to, let's say, maging raw strength runes, the way maging works is it prioritizes dropping over mages before it prioritizes using sync. So if I use a raw strength rune, even though we have 50 sync, it's not going to affect my sync. It's going to substitute and take 20 intelligence because it's over maged. So here we lost, sorry, I meant 10 intelligence. Here we lost 10 intelligence and we will lose 10 again. And as you can see, there's no message about sync, so we are still at 50 sync. So here I'll use -10, 20, 30, 40, 50. So there's -50 sync, and now let's see if we can critical success the AP. We got a failure and a critical success. Nice. So that is how you calculate sync in games, and from here we'll move on to the next part of this tutorial. So what a control drop is a way to ensure that when you have an overmaged stat, you can drop it back to a its safety range without over dropping it. So for example here, as you can see, I have 316 vitality. If I wanted to raise that to 350, I would have to use raw because it's over the minimum, or it's over 300 vitality, which is where pause stop working. So if I used a raw vitality here, you can see I have 366 vitality. That is a 16 vitality over mage. So if I bring up my calculator, 16 vitality is 3.2 sync. So we want to use a rune that is roughly around 3 sync to drop this, and that will drop at the appropriate amount. So to show what is not good to do is if I were to use a critical, this is 10 sync, I will lose 50 vitality. So, you know, that's not what you want to do. You want to keep it around 350. So if I get my vitality back up, we are back at a situation where we have 3.2 sync vitality over mage. So if I use something that is 3 sync, such as a prospecting, I will drop it 15. And as you can see now, I'm only 1 vitality over capped. So then I want to use a stat that is 1 sync, such as an initiative rune, and that will drop it down to just below 350. So that is how you use a control drop. It's a way to ensure that you're not, losing stats, and you can edit stats that are in a hard spot to mage using this. So for example, this chance at 73, I can't use pause on this because it's above 60, but if I used a raw, we actually dropped a sum there, and then I use the prospecting, I will go to exactly 80 chance. So that is how you use a control drop, and from here we can move into maximum overmages. To explain the maximum overmage, I'm going to have the chart on the screen now because maximum overmage has its own column in this chart. So how to interpret this column is if we look at, let's start with an easy one, for example, AP. So AP maximum overmage is 1. This does not mean we can overmage AP by 1. This means the maximum number of AP that can be on an item is 1. So and that's true for AP, but that's not true for every stat on here. Essentially, the rule that applies to the maximum overmage column is if the stat on your item is equivalent or more than that number in the maximum overmage, you will get an error message for trying to mage it. So if we bring back game footage now, on this Galeno, I have 1 AP. On the chart, we know that AP has a maximum overmage of 1. So because this is equivalent to the maximum overmage, we're going to get an error message, like so. So this is kind of like the 5th option that can happen when you hit combine. I didn't include it in the 4 options that I explained, which were critical success, success, critical failure, failure. That's because this doesn't really do anything. It actually isn't a combine, it's an error. So this is like the 5th option that can happen when you hit combine. So that is for AP, but now if we bring the chart back up and we look at percent ranged damage, for example, the maximum overmage there is 6. So let us find an item like my Cubist shield. So if we move over to craft maging here, and I put my Cubist shield in here, this, by the way, these are not the stats that I use my Cubist shield at. This is actually on beta. But for the percent range damage, the maximum overmage is 6. So this is a greater amount than 6, so I'm going to get the error message. However, if we swap this out for, let's say, the Sharkle shield, which has 3%, which is lower than the maximum overmage, it's not going to give us the error message. It's going to allow us to try and land these runes. Whether we land them or not is up to luck, but yeah, it does let us mage without getting an error message for that. So that is maximum overmage. Another example for this that I'm trying to think of is the 101 sync rule. So this is a very important rule of maging. On this adventure ring, as you can see, we have exoed on 10 initiative as well as 1 AP. There are no other stats on this ring, but there could be if I made this a better mage. So what the 101 sync rule is that any exomage or overmage on an item, or any combination of the two, cannot exceed 101 sync. So what that means is on this item, I have exomaged 1 AP and 10 initiative. So 1 AP is 100 sync, and 10 initiative is 1 sync. So that is exactly 101 sync Exomage. So a demonstration of this rule would be if I tried to go over 101 sync Exomage. So if we tried to put another initiative on this, we're going to get an error message. And that's because we are already at 101 sync. However, if I had an item, I think my hat is AP Exode. Yes, so if I move over to Costume Mage here, this hat has 1 AP on it, and none of these stats are overmaged. Again, these are not the stats that I play at. This is beta, so I've been messing around with this stuff. But this item has 1 AP. In comparison to the Adventure Ring, this still has 1 sync available to reach the 101 sync rule, because there's no initiative on this. So if I were to try and put 1 initiative on this hat, it's not going to give me the error message. It's going to let me try and mage this, though it's not landing. I do, the option is there to try and land that 1 initiative because there is still 1 sync available. So this provides a lot of different combinations of mages that you can do. For example, range is 51 sync. So if I pull up my calculator to make it visual, range is 51 sync and summons is 30 sync. You could technically exo both range and summon on the same item. That would require 2 exos right in a row, but that is possible. So exomages, which I did not cover before, every exomage that is a AP, MP range or summon is a 1% chance of landing. Those are the 4 1% chance exos, and then they do not rely on sync. So if I were to try an exo, do I have any of those runes on me? Okay, I have summon runes. So let's go back to Jewel Magus right quick, and let's throw in this Adventure Ring. Okay, so this is a 1% chance of landing. It did not land. 1% chance, 1%. Every single time I click, it is a 1% chance of landing the summon rune. That is true for range, AP, MP. So there we go. We got a 1%, or we got a summon, and that actually didn't take that many tries. That's 1, 2. I'm not going to count all those, but that's less than 100 tries. So this was very lucky. Summon is a unique rune because it is 30 sync. And if I refer back to the chart and you look at the maximum overmage value, summon has a maximum overmage value of 3. So what that means is you can actually exo 3 summons onto 1 item. That is extremely rare because it would require 3 1% chances in a row. And if you are good at statistics, that is an extremely low chance. So that is a possibility, but that would take 3 1% chances in a row. So if you look now, if I were to try, let's say, an AP rune here, it's going to give me the error message because this is 100 sync and this is 30 sync, which would be 130, and the maximum we can do is 101 sync overmage. So I could technically try another summon here, and I actually just lost my exo, but you can see it didn't give me an error message there. So that is proof that you can overmage more than 1 summon, and the maximum that you can reach is 3 summons. Oh, excuse me. So, oh god, it's coming again. So from there, we can now move into negative sync values. Negative sync values. So negative sync values are another very complicated part of this tutorial. This is also the last segment and arguably the most complicated part, maybe rivaled by understanding sync. But if you came into this video understanding how to count sync, this is going to be the part of the video where you might learn something new. So negative sync values were assumed for a long time to be 1/2 of their normal sync value. If I pull up the chart here, you can see I added the column of negative sync values right next to the sync value column. So the negative sync value column, if you look, differs in like numerical value from the sync values. If we focus in on initiative, you can see that it is exactly 1/2. Same for vitality. There is no such thing as negative pods, or at least I could not find any item in the game that had negative pods. So I put an X there. So On this chart, I went through and tested every single negative stat in the game that I could find. If I couldn't find a negative stat, I put an X in the column. But aside from the ones with X's, I went through and tested them all. And I found that the 1/2 sync value, while negative, is not true. So it is mostly true. However, there are exceptions to this rule. So on this item that I have here, if we switch back to the game, you can see it has negative pushback resistance. So pushback resistance when positive is 2 sync. So when negative, it should be 1 sync. And as you can see, I have overmaged agility. And so the agility will drop and be an indicator of how much sync this is worth. So if I click combine, you can see -1 agility, +1 pushback resistance, and no message about sync. So that means these two stats are exactly equivalent if there's no message about sync. And we know for sure that 1 agility is 1 sync, so that would make negative pushback resistance 1 sync, which is 1/2 its normal value. So this is an example of the 1/2 sync value while negative being true. So negative pushback resistance, 1 sync while negative, 2 sync while positive. That's exactly half. There are stats in the game that break this rule. For example, percent spell damage. Actually, all percent damages and resistances besides fixed and elemental. So that would mean percent spell damage, percent range damage, percent range resistance, percent weapon damage, percent melee damage, as well as percent melee resistance. So if we switch over to shield maging here, you can see, okay, we could do weapon damage here. So if I simply throw on some exomaged stat, okay, there we go, 9 is fine. We'll get slightly more. Okay, we'll get 15. So can we get 25 maybe? Come on, 20 would be fine. I just want to get enough to work with here. Okay, good. So we got 21. So the rest of these stats don't matter. And just to make sure that we are starting with this at 0 sync, if you equip an item, like so, it clears the sync and you will start with 0 sync. Just to prove that, just so there's no funny business going on here, with this Galeno, if I use, we'll use summons, and I should have 70 sync, right? So if I were to use this, we have sync, so now we have 60 sync. And if I were to equip this Galeno, and then I were to de-equip it and start maging again, I should have 60 sync. However, I don't. I get failure after failure after failure, and that's because there's no sync left. So equipping an item clears the sync. So be careful of that. If you're maging and you want to keep the sync on an item, be careful. So I just cleared the sync on this shield. And now if we start maging the negative weapon damage, because after all, this is the negative sync section. So this is 15 sync while positive. So by the 1/2 sync rule, which is false, this should be 7.5 sync. However, it's not. This is an example of an alteration from the rule. So this rune, while negative, is actually 8 sync, not 7.5. So if I do this, you see -8 agility, no sync message. If this were 7.5 sync, I would have a plus sync message right here, which would be 0.5. However, I don't. And it happens again. So this is 8 sync while negative. And I won't go through all of them. However, there are other alterations to this, including critical damage, pushback damage, MP reduction, AP reduction, MP resist, AP resist, and I believe negative stat, elemental stat. So for negative elemental stat, I will show you on satisfaction boots. I'm actually just going to clear the initiative off of these, and we will start with 100 initiative. Alright, so we'll start with that. It doesn't matter that I'm missing the MP. Now I will clear the sync off of them. So equip them, de-equip them, start maging again. So they're at 0 sync. And now if I go and mage, let's say 1 agility, that was a critical success, and so was all of this. Wow. So there we go. -10 initiative, which we know is 1 sync. And these are 1 sync positive, and surprisingly they are also 1 sync negative. They are not 0.5. So those are the alterations to the rule. Those are all included in the chart in the negative sync column. So that is a difference to the rule that was accepted by so many Maguses for a very long time, that half sync was the correct value while negative. And then I also want to clear up how to mage negative stack. To show you guys how to properly mage the negative critical resistance off of Treadfast here, I've just created an item. I literally just nuked this thing with AP runes. And here I'm going to drop the AP so that we can start maging with sync. So I'm just going to use a damage rune to drop the AP with, which is 20 sync. So, oh shoot, I forgot, that's a overmage here. So I guess I will try and use critical runes, and hopefully we can drop the AP. There we go. Okay, so that leaves us with 90 sync here. So now we can move forward maging this with 90 sync. So here you can see we have negative 25 critical resistance. Because this is negative, the critical resistance runes are 1 sync and the pause are 3 sync compared to their normal 2 and 6. So here the reason that I'm showing this is because it gets tricky when you reach close to 0. So here I'm just going to go and count my sync. So that was free, -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, so here I'm just going to update this and do -15. So now here is a tricky part. If I mage this, let's say down to -3, so these are 3 sync each, -3, 6, 9, 12. So now if I do -12, the tricky part about this is these are all 3 sync because they're negative PA critical resistance. However, now that if I were to hit combine here and it was a success, the outcome of this mage would be 0 critical resistance. 0 is not a positive or not a negative number. So because the outcome of this combine is not negative, the sync value of this rune now changes to its positive sync value, which is 6. So this is where people miscount sync on Treadfast. If I were to use, critical resistance, these are still 1 sync because the outcome is -2 critical resistance, which is negative. So here -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so here we have, that was -8 sync. And now we're at -1 critical resistance. So if I were to hit combine, this would now change to 2 sync because it would be going to 0 critical resistance, which is no longer negative. So the proper way to mage Treadfast would be to use small runes here. I'll demonstrate here. If we put on, how much do I need to drop this by? I need to drop this by 9. So maybe, do we have prospecting on this item? We don't. Okay, well, I'll just use prospecting runes. And I need to drop by 9. So -3. We gained that prospecting there. And we got that. Okay, cool. So now we have negative. I kind of want to get rid of that prospecting. Do we have PA vitalities anywhere? Oh shoot, we lost critical resistance. Okay, there we go. Now the prospecting is gone. So the proper way to mage critical resistance here is to use smalls until you get to -10. So if we use 3 more of these, -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that took 8 sync. So -8. And now you switch to pause because you want to use as many pause as you can without reaching the 6 sync value. So if we use 3 successes of pause here, -3, 6, 9, 12, 15. So that's -15 sync. So here you can see we're at -1 critical resistance. So the reason that I did it this way is because you want to reach -1 using PA critical resistance runes so that you get the only 3 sync value version of the PA critical resistance. If I were to have started maging this with pause at -9, I would have reached 0 with this last one, and it would be 6 sync rather than 3. So now I can start using the normal positive sync value of 6 for the pause and 2 for the smalls. So if I look here, I have 32 sync, so I actually need to use 2 sync to reach a number divisible by 6. So I'll use 1 small, which is minus 2 sync, and now I can use my 5 pause. So this is minus 3, 6, 9. Oh, sorry, no, these are 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. So that was all of our sync there. I started counting using the negative sync value, which is an easy habit to fall into, so beware. Make sure that you're using the correct sync value. So now I'm at 0 sync. Unfortunately, none of those landed, but this is how you properly mage negative critical resistance off of a treadfast item. You use smalls until negative 10, and then you switch to pause, and once you reach negative 1, you begin using the negative or the positive sync value. So now if I were to even try one more critical resistance, I would end up losing stat. Yeah, so I lost 10 vitality for that. So we used all of our sync. Unfortunately, it's a bad mage. You know, I had high hopes. These stats are pretty good. So that will bring the negative sync section to a close. And we do have one more special announcement for you guys at the end of this video. If you have been playing Dofus for a while or have been active on social media, you may know that the previous community manager named Ismar recently stepped down. The last video on our channel here was a farewell interview with her as she finished her last day at the Ankama offices. And at the end of that interview off camera, she was very kind and offered this channel an opportunity to give back to our viewers. So essentially, she gave us a bunch of game codes to give away. Well, technically she just gave us game codes, but we're choosing to give them away to you guys for helping us grow this channel and just being really good. You guys always provide awesome comments and you give us good likes and dislike ratios, so we really appreciate you guys. You talk to us in game and you're all just like really friendly and outgoing and a really nice group. So to give back to you guys, we have some game codes both in the game Dofus and Wakfu. Now I know that this is a Dofus channel, but if there are any Wakfu players out there, we do have some codes to give away for that too. So for example, we have the Bloody emote in Dofus. We have a 1-month subscription in Dofus. And we also have some stuff in Wakfu, such as I think we have a Shushavin set and a couple other things. So we do have a bunch of those codes, and we're going to be giving those away in future videos. The reason that we're not starting giving them away in this video is because the way that we're going to do this giveaway is by commenting on the video. However, we want the comments on this maging guide to be geared towards the video, since this is a complicated video and we don't want to flood out any questions with giveaway comments. So just stay tuned on this channel and you will be able to participate in these giveaways. We're going to be doing one per video for the next couple videos until we run out of codes. So thank you guys for watching. I apologize that this was such a long video, but hopefully you guys learned something, and this has been Ability signing off.